Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the high-stakes economic chess game playing out between the US and India and how India's upcoming budget could be its most important move yet.
So let's kick things off with a real head-turner of a statement from a top US official. He's hinting that a massive trade penalty against India might actually be reversed, which could signal a major shift in economic tensions.
That, of course, begs the question, right? Why were these huge tariffs slapped on India in the first place? Well, to get to the bottom of that, we have to rewind the clock to a major geopolitical event that completely changed the game for India's energy trade.
All right, first up, let's look at this latest twist in the story. A potential rollback of some pretty punishing US tariffs that have been a real sore spot in the relationship.
So get this. At the World Economic Forum, the US Treasury Secretary basically floats the idea that the 25% tariff on India for buying Russian oil could be taken off the table. And the reason they're giving? They're basically claiming, hey, mission accomplished. The official line is that the policy worked because India's purchases of Russian oil have collapsed.
So how did this whole mess even start? It wasn't just some minor trade squabble. It was a direct reaction to a huge, sudden shift in where the world's oil was flowing.
Okay, look at these numbers. Before the invasion of Ukraine, Russian oil was just a tiny blip on India's radar. We're talking only 2 to 3% of its total imports. But after, Russia started offering its oil at these massive discounts, and in response, India's imports just exploded, jumping to almost a fifth of its entire supply. It was a move driven by pure economics, and it's what directly set off the US response.
And here's something that's absolutely crucial to understand. That 25% oil tariff, it wasn't some one-off penalty. Nope, it was actually part of a much broader trade policy that saw total tariffs of up to 50% slapped on a whole range of Indian goods, creating some serious friction.
So, faced with all this pressure, what did India do? Did they just take it on the chin? Absolutely not. It started making some really smart, strategic moves to make itself less vulnerable to US economic policy.
Now, to really get what India's been up to, we have to talk about this key concept, de-dollarization. Think about it. The US dollar is the king of global finance, right? That gives Washington a ton of economic leverage. De-dollarization is basically the playbook for countries trying to gain a little more independence in that system.
And this timeline, man, it tells such a clear story. The catalyst seems to be February 2022, when the US froze Russia's foreign reserves. That move was like a giant warning flare to the rest of the world about the risks of keeping all your eggs in the dollar basket. And what happens right after? India starts deliberately selling off its US government debt.
And here's what that pivot looks like in black and white. You can see a pretty significant drop in the chunk of foreign reserves held in US treasuries, from around 40% down to 33%. And at the same time, India's central bank has been on a gold buying spree and now holds the 7th largest reserves in the entire world.
Which brings us right up to today. All eyes are on India's upcoming annual budget. And let me tell you, people aren't just looking at it as a domestic plan anymore. It's being seen as a formal, strategic response to all of these intense global pressures.
And the finance minister is under some serious pressure. I mean, just look at this list of challenges. You've got the constant risk of tariffs, a volatile currency, money actually flowing out of the country, and the huge task of trying to shield Indian exporters from all the global chaos.
So what's the game plan? Well, analysts are expecting a big focus on building an economic fortress from the inside out. That means boosting domestic manufacturing so India relies less on imports, giving targeted support to exporters to help them compete, and continuing to pour tons of money into infrastructure to fuel growth at home.
Now, it's so important to remember that this whole tug-of-war between the US and India isn't happening in a vacuum. Not at all. It's actually a perfect snapshot of a much, much larger global shift that is changing the entire world economy. And India is definitely not alone here. A staggering 60% of the world's central banks are reportedly planning to diversify away from the US dollar. We're talking about heavy hitters like China, Brazil, even European countries like Poland. It's a massive signal that the old financial order is changing, and fast.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. As we watch nations use economic policy and tariffs as their new weapons of choice, are we witnessing the creation of a whole new playbook for how to survive and thrive in a multipolar economic world?
If you found this breakdown useful, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more explainers just like this one. What's your take on this huge global shift? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching.